I'm Adira Calloway, 32, the youngest daughter in a Newport family that looks polished from the outside. Old money, coastal house, private schools, but has always treated me like excess baggage. While my brother inherited confidence and my father inherited control, I inherited the bills, the blame, and a job I worked twice as hard to keep. I've spent my life feeling like the spare part, too soft to belong, too stubborn to disappear, pretending the bruises were accidental and the silence was normal. I thought the worst thing that could happen was waking up in a hospital bed after a near-fatal crash and hearing my father snarl, "Pay, rent, or get out." I was wrong. Because hours later, while the stitches were still fresh and the blood hadn't dried, the police called. And that's when I learned the truth my family buried was about to claw its way back to the surface. My ribs ached. My mouth tasted like copper. The morphine was wearing off. The door creaked. Boots thudded against the tile. My father's boots. He filled the room with his presence before I even saw him. His shadow swallowed me whole. "You look like shit," he muttered. No greeting. No concern. Just those words. Then the rent's due. 3rd of the month. I was unconscious on the 1st, I rasped, and barely alive on the 2nd. Not my problem. His voice was a blade. "Pay up or get out." Silence bled in. He stepped closer. His eyes weren't the eyes of a father. They were the eyes of someone assessing damage to property. I opened my mouth to speak, tried to ask if he even read the hospital report, that I nearly died, that my car was crushed by a drunk driver running a red. He raised his hand. The slap wasn't a warning. It was a sentence, a crack of flesh and bone. My head snapped sideways. I tasted blood. The heart monitor screamed. My 4 ripped out. Red spread on white sheets like spilled ink. He stood over me. Not a flicker of guilt. Just that sneer. "You think you're too good for this family?" A nurse stepped in, froze, then turned and walked away. He had that effect on people. Thatcher Calloway didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. People moved like smoke around him, disappearing before things got ugly. Behind him stood Leora, perfectly poised, fake tan gleaming under hospital fluorescence. She clutched my handbag, my entire life in leather. Phone, ID, wallet. I'd left it in the car during the crash. Her smile was soft, snake soft. "You shouldn't talk back when he's stressed, sweetheart." She had a folder in her other hand. I saw my name on one envelope. I reached for it. She pulled back. Thatcher turned. "She'll get it when she pays what's owed." The door opened again. Oren. Leather jacket, sunglasses inside, Starbucks in hand. My brother. He leaned against the wall, sipped his latte, checked his phone. "She's awake." "Cool." I wanted to scream. Instead, I tried to sit up. Pain flashed white across my chest. They watched, like I was a show, or a pet that failed a trick. 3 days, Thatcher said, adjusting his cuffs. "You either pay or you're out on the street." Then he walked out. The door hissed shut. I slumped back, chest burning, pulse racing. My phone vibrated. Not my phone. Hospital phone. I blinked, reached for it. My hand shook. "Ms. Calloway." A woman's voice. Calm, steady. Too steady. "Detective Vargas, Newport Police Department. I need to ask you some questions regarding your social security number." Pause. "We've had multiple reports of identity fraud, linked to your name and possibly linked to your father." My throat dried. Vargas continued. "There's more. The information we've received, it connects to your mother's estate and her death." Silence. I didn't breathe. I looked around the room. Blood on my pillow. My father's echo still in the air. "You're not just a victim of financial fraud, Miss Calloway," Vargas said. "You might be the only surviving witness of a cover-up that started over a decade ago." I gripped the phone. She wasn't finished. "Your father's not just taking your money, he may have rewritten your mother's death." I didn't sleep that night. Not even close. After the hospital discharged me with 2 cracked ribs, a swollen lip, and a foggy CT scan, I sat in the back seat of Vargas's unmarked car as she drove through Providence's rainy streets. I watched reflections in the window, like ghosts dancing on glass. My hands shook, not from pain, from knowing something wasn't right. Why would your dad push to evict you from a house your mother left you? Vargas asked softly, eyes still on the road. I clenched my jaw, because I never saw the will. Cut. Morning. Rain still falling. A downtown lawyer's office, sterile, sharp-smelling, lit too bright. "Adira," said Dana Rowan, the family attorney, as she slid a beige folder across the table. "This is the copy of your mother's will your father presented 6 months ago. It names him as sole beneficiary, not you." The blood drained from my face. I opened the folder. My mother's signature. But it was wrong. Too angular. Too clean. Mom's signature always slanted left. This one curved right. "This isn't real," I whispered. Rowan blinked. It was notarized. Filed through probate court. Judge Connors signed off. Was there a witness? Your brother, Nolan. I laughed. A cold, humorless breath. You ever hear the phrase, the closer the blood, the deeper the knife? She didn't answer. Scene cut. I drove to the estate myself. The locks had been changed. A big red notice slapped across the front gate. Private property, N.O., trespassing. It was my childhood home. My mother's home. The garden still carried the smell of jasmine and earth, hers. I wasn't crying, but I wasn't breathing either. Cut. I called Nolan. Straight to voicemail. Again. Then a text from him lit up my phone. You should have stayed out of it, Adira. Too late now. Heart pounding. I sent one word back. Why? No response. Sometimes silence is the loudest confession, Vargas said when I showed her the text. We sat across from one another in a diner. Coffee cooling. Forks untouched. You ready to do this my way? She asked. I nodded. It was time. Cut. Later that night, we sat in a parked car outside AMC Financial Group, the company that suddenly owned our house. The lights in the third-floor office were still on. A shadow moved past the blinds. That's Langston's office, Vargas muttered. Who's Langston? I asked. She gave me a sharp look. He's the executor for your mother's estate. Technically, he filed the title transfer to AMC. But why would a bank own the house? Vargas smiled bitterly. Because AMC's not just a bank. Cut. 3 days later, we sat in the basement of City Archives, surrounded by boxes and decades of probate records. And that's when I found it. A photocopy of Mom's first will, dated 2 years earlier. Signed, witnessed, sealed. It named me sole beneficiary. All of it. House assets, trust fund, mine. Cut. I turned to Vargas. This is fraud. Her nod was slow, deadly. Now we prove who switched the wills. Suddenly, a sharp knock echoed down the stairwell. Both of us froze. Second knock. Louder. Footsteps overhead. You expecting anyone? She whispered. I shook my head. The lights flickered. Pack the files. Now, she said. Third knock. Then silence. We ran. Out the back. Rain again. Thunder. As we drove off, I saw a figure at the corner. Long coat. Umbrella. Watching. Still. Always watching. And in that moment, I realized this wasn't just about my family anymore. Someone much bigger was pulling the strings. Detective Vargas's office smelled like old paper and stale coffee. Fluorescents buzzed overhead. She slid a manila folder across the desk without a word. Inside, still shots. A woman. My mother. A kitchen I hadn't seen in 13 years. She looked tired. Her hair pulled back. A faint tremble in her hands. Her lips moved. But I didn't hear her until Vargas hit play. The video had no preamble, just static, then clarity. If anything happens to me, it wasn't my heart. It wasn't natural. And it wasn't an accident. My throat clenched. She recorded this the week she died, Vargas said, quietly. We had to decrypt the file. It was pulled from a drive found in Radley Grant's safe deposit box in Bristol. Radley's dead, I said. It came out more like a question than a fact. We thought so too. She pressed another key. Grainy surveillance footage replaced my mother's face. Timestamp, 13 years ago. June, just before her collapse. Thatcher, Leora, and a third figure, broad-shouldered, wearing a baseball cap, half hidden, standing outside a pharmacy. They exchanged something. A small envelope. The cap guy left in a black SUV with Vermont plates. Who's that? I asked. Radley Grant, she said. Still alive. Until 2 days ago. We believe he faked his disappearance to avoid indictment. What changed? She looked me dead in the eyes. He reached out. Said he had documents. Insurance papers. Said he couldn't run anymore. Then he vanished again. We traced the documents to a rented storage unit under a fake name. Inside was the video. I blinked. So what now? Vargas's voice dropped. Now, we open the investigation into your mother's death. My palms sweated. I could barely breathe. Everything in me screamed that I needed to leave. Run. But I didn't move. He filled her prescription after she was warned it could kill her, Vargas added. 2 days before her final episode, someone used a forged signature to authorize a refill of metoprolol at a pharmacy 50 miles away. She never took that medication before. He used her death, I whispered, as a cover. Vargas nodded once. They always do, until someone stops them. I sat in my car outside Miriam's house for 10 minutes before I went in. The laptop on my passenger seat held the drive. I hadn't watched it all yet. Just the beginning. Inside, Miriam had tea ready. She'd always made tea, like it could fix things. It couldn't. I found something, I said. Her hands shook slightly as she poured. I knew it wasn't natural. Jillian was terrified those last months, always looking over her shoulder. She recorded herself, told me it wasn't an accident. And there's more. Miriam didn't ask, just nodded, her eyes red but focused. Then we finished what she couldn't. Later that night, in my old room, now stripped bare except for the mattress and a few boxes, I watched the rest. The video cut out mid-sentence. My mother turned toward the door. Her voice caught, then static, then black. No timestamp, no goodbye. Just an unfinished warning. I rewound it 3 times. Her last words echoed like a knife dragging across glass. She knew, I said to the screen. And someone else knew she knew. A message pinged. Unknown number. You shouldn't have opened it. I froze. Another ping. Your mother never learned to listen. I looked around. Window open an inch. Curtain fluttering. Wind or breath. My stomach flipped. I ran to the door, locked it, pulled the curtain shut. Another ping. Next time we won't warn you. I called Vargas. No answer. I called again. Voicemail. I packed the drive into my bag, threw on my coat and bolted. Halfway down the driveway, a black car idled across the street. Engine running. No lights. I didn't stop to check. I got in my car and drove. Faster than I should have. Every red light felt like a target. Every shadow behind me felt like a weapon. Because now it wasn't about fraud. It wasn't about rent. It wasn't about control. It was about silence. About keeping something buried so deep no one would dare dig. But I had already dug. And what I found? They didn't just steal from me, they silenced her. And now they're coming for me. The old house hadn't changed. Not the cracked porch light. Not the smell of mold clinging to the curtains. Even the family portraits still hung crooked in the hallway, their glass dusty, their smiles frozen. I slipped inside with the key Miriam gave me, one she shouldn't have still had. Thatcher, Leora, and Oren were at a fundraiser across town. A country club event they posted about like royalty. Perfect. I had 90 minutes, maybe less. The silence was thick, not peaceful, watchful. I crept past the living room, past the grand piano that hadn't been touched since Mom died, past the fireplace where we used to hang stockings before the holidays turned cold and cash-oriented. My room was gutted, just dust and drywall now. The safe was still where I remembered, behind the photo of Thatcher and Radley, standing over a dead buck, grinning like conquerors. I slid the frame aside. The safe clicked. Code unchanged. Thatcher never believed in changing locks if no one lived long enough to steal from him. Inside, thick folders, a velvet pouch, 2 external hard drives, and a burner phone, screen cracked, battery barely alive. I grabbed everything, started flipping. The documents were clean. Too clean. Then I saw it. Power of attorney, signed July 17th, 2011. 2 months after my mother's death. My breath caught. Forgery. Leora's signature appeared as a witness. The trust had been altered. Life insurance redesignated. Leora as sole beneficiary. My mother had written me in. That was gone now. This was it. Proof. My hands shook as I snapped photos, one by one. Then the phone buzzed. Not mine. The burner. Unknown number. Where are you? I froze. Buzz. You should have stayed gone. A car door slammed outside. Boots on gravel. I moved. Cut scene. Through the laundry room. Down the back stairs. I slipped out just as headlights poured into the kitchen from the driveway. Thatcher's voice, muffled, angry, close. Check the safe. I bolted. My coat snagged on the fence. Ripped. My phone slipped. I caught it midair. Rain started falling in sheets. Cold. Blinding. I ran faster. Wind slicing. My breath ragged. Every sound too loud. Too close. I ducked into the alley behind Ridgeway Avenue. Hid between 2 dumpsters. Texted Vargas. I have it. I have everything. Meet me. Now. Silence. 1 minute. 2. Then. Be at the precinct in 20. Side entrance. Come alone. I moved again. Every footstep behind me felt real. Every passing car felt like a threat. The kind of paranoia that comes from not being paranoid enough. Too many times. My mother used to say, the only ones who call you crazy are the ones hoping you'll shut up. I didn't plan on shutting up. I reached the street and crossed to the library. Cut through the hedge. Pushed out onto Palmer Avenue. Someone stepped in front of me. Leora. In heels. Black coat. Dry. She'd come straight from somewhere else. Smile sharp. Lipstick immaculate. Adira. Going somewhere. I didn't answer. She stepped closer. You're so much like her, you know? Too idealistic. Too emotional. Not built for power. You forged her name, I said. You stole from her. From me. She tilted her head. No, darling. We rescued the family. You were just collateral. I stepped back. I have everything. You think truth matters? Her voice dropped. People don't care what's real. They care what's repeated. Behind her, a black SUV turned the corner. Slowed. No plates. Don't do something stupid, Adira, she said. You already did. I turned and ran again. Cut scene. I didn't stop until I reached the police station. My lungs burned. Vargas waited under the awning. A file under her arm. Eyes sharp. You made it, she said. I handed her the flash drive, the photos, the forged papers. She looked through them fast. Jaw tightening. This is enough, she whispered. We'll move tonight. She started to turn, then paused. Adira. Radley gave us a name. I froze. Who? She handed me a sealed envelope. Inside, a legal memo. Handwritten at the top, Gregory Langston. I blinked. The estate attorney? I said. He disappeared. No, Vargas said. He ran. Her voice dropped. He wasn't just cleaning up the will. He orchestrated it. I stared at the name again. Langston. And something inside me shattered. If I step into that courtroom, I said slowly, I might not walk out alive. The courthouse steps were slick with rain and camera cables. Flashbulbs popped. Voices blurred. My name cut through the noise like a thrown blade. Adira, this way. Detective Vargas didn't slow. She moved with the certainty of someone who knew exits before entrances. We slipped through the side door. Metal detector. Wand. Wrist stamp. The smell of lemon cleaner and wet wool. Inside, the courtroom felt smaller than memory. Wood panels. Flags. A clock that ticked too loud. Cut. My father sat at the defense table. Hands folded. Posture perfect. He wore the suit my mother bought him for their 10th anniversary. The one he said made him look honest. Leora sat beside him, spine straight, eyes dry. Her lawyer leaned in, whispering. Oren was behind them, face pale, jaw working like he was chewing glass. I took the stand. Short oath. Short breath. The prosecutor began with money. Dates. Numbers. Clean lines. I answered in sentences that clipped themselves. Keep it tight. Keep it factual. Truth doesn't need decoration. Then Vargas stood. She placed the burner phone into evidence. The forged power of attorney. The altered beneficiary forms. The video file. Play it, the judge said. The screen flickered. My mother's face filled the room. If anything happens to me, it wasn't my heart. It wasn't natural. And it wasn't an accident. A murmur rippled through the benches. Leora didn't blink. The defense objected. Authenticity. Chain of custody. Vargas waited. Let the noise crest. Then nodded to the tech. Cut. Parking lot footage. 13 years ago. A pharmacy sign blinking. A woman with my mother's walk. A man with my father's shoulders. A third figure in a cap. Leora's hand tightened on the table. Enhance, Vargas said. The cap lifted for a second. A profile. A scar. Radley Grant, Vargas said. Alive. Cooperating. Gasps. A chair scraped. The defense rose, flustered. Speculation. Denied, the judge said. Radley's deposition rolled. Grainy. Nervous. He spoke about envelopes. Refill authorizations. A lawyer who knew how to hide ink in plain sight. Gregory Langston, Radley said on screen. He told us where to bury it, how to make it look clean. My father's jaw flexed. Cut. A second screen lit. A time-stamped receipt. A prescription filled after a documented warning. The pharmacy, 50 miles away. The witness signature, Leora's maiden name. Leora inhaled. Slow. Controlled. The way swimmers do before diving deep. The prosecutor leaned in. Mrs. Burt, did you authorize this refill? Leora stood. No, she said softly. I love Jillian. The lie hung there, fragile as spun glass. Distraction. The defense pivoted, attacking me. My accident. My finances. My motive. The insinuation slid across the room like oil. I watched my father's face. Calm. Counting on the noise. Reveal. Vargas pressed a button. New footage. A recent trail cam. A man stepping into frame in the woods of Maine. Older. Bearded. Alive. Radley waved at the camera. The room broke. Leora's composure cracked. Just a hairline. Enough. Then Oren stood up. I didn't know she'd die, he blurted. I thought we were just cutting her out of the trust. Silence fell so fast it hurt. The judge banged the gavel. Order. Order. My father turned, eyes sharp, warning. Too late. A thought came to me, cold and clean. Power doesn't scream when it's winning. It whispers when it's cornered. Vargas leaned toward me. We're not done. She passed me a file under the table. Inside, a memo stamped privileged. Gregory Langston's letterhead. Notes in the margin. A plan sketched like a chess problem. This wasn't just paperwork. It was architecture. Langston had designed the maze. The others ran it. The judge recessed. Deputies moved in. Leora's lawyer whispered furiously. My father sat very still. As we stood, Vargas spoke low. Langston didn't just clean the will. He controlled the flow. Payments. Threats. When your mother tried to amend the trust, he blocked it. When Radley panicked, Langston vanished. And now? I asked. And now we find him. Outside, the rain had stopped. The crowd surged. Questions. Accusations. I kept walking. A line drifted through my head, something my mother once said while balancing the checkbook at midnight. When the truth finally shows up, it never comes alone. My phone vibrated. Unknown number. This was never your father's plan. Another buzz. You're looking at the wrong grave. I looked up. Across the plaza, a man watched from beneath an awning. Hat low. Face half lit. He smiled like he knew the ending. This wasn't just my father's plan, I said, the file heavy in my hand. This goes deeper. Someone else wanted my mother dead, and they're not finished with me. The air was cold, sharp, like it knew secrets I hadn't uncovered yet. I stood outside the warehouse on the edge of the Blackstone River, rain slicing through the night like shards of glass. The headlights from the unmarked vans carved long shadows across cracked pavement. I could hear radios buzzing. Voices I didn't know. Men and women in black gear checking weapons, loading flashlights, syncing watches. Detective Vargas didn't look at me, just handed me a black folder thick with everything we'd built between us. Documents, video stills, phone logs, unedited audio files, bank transfers, trust amendments that proved corruption, greed, and murder. Ready, she asked. I nodded. No words fit. No turning back. Inside we went. Concrete floors. Echoing steps. A warehouse frozen in time. Boxes stacked to ceiling. Dust motes like ghosts dancing in the flashlight beams. This was the place. The final door. Cut. We split into teams. Vargas and 2 deputies to the north. Me and Agent Reeves to the south. Orders were simple. Sweep fast. No hesitation. Corridor. Echo. Footsteps. A door. Padlock cracked. Inside, filing cabinets. A desk. A laptop covered in dust and fingerprints. Fresh ones. I reached for it. Reeves froze. Behind us, a slow shuffle. Turn. Gregory Langston stood in the doorway. Suit rumpled. Eyes wild like he'd been living inside his own fear for years. So nice of you to visit, he said with a crooked smile. He held something behind his back. A gun. Instinct hit before thought. I dove left. Reeves dove right. Bang. The shot echoed. Close. Too close. Langston stepped forward, pistol out. You think this is about truth, he said. This is about survival. I built this house. They just lived in it. I swallowed. Tried to breathe. Tried to recall something sane. Truth lives, I said, voice low, even when people bury it. He laughed, a dry, ragged sound. Truth is noise, he spat, and noise gets destroyed. Vargas's voice cracked over the radio. Teams down. Retreat. Now. Flashbangs and shouts. Suddenly, the room splintered into chaos. Reeves tackled Langston. The gun fired again. Sparks on concrete. A deputy's shout. In slow motion, I saw Vargas hit the ground, her ankle twisting. Pain, sharp and immediate. Every heartbeat thundered. Every breath wanted to stop. Reveal. The laptop lid flipped open. On screen, my mother's handwriting. Files titled, Will _ final _ amendment. Account _ ledger _ 2008, 2010. Letter _ My eyes locked on. If you find this, know that courage is not absence of fear. Then another file caught. Lincoln _ tax _ statements. I clicked. Numbers. Transfers. Offshore accounts. Hidden assets traced not to Langston, not to Reuters Holdings, not even to the Callaway Trust, but to a third entity, AMC Financial Group, a shell company linked to major Newport elites. Twist. Langston wasn't the architect. He was a facilitator. Someone above him funded everything. Someone untouchable. The deputy yelled my name. Gunfight behind me. I didn't want to leave the files, but I had to. I grabbed the laptop. Roaring footsteps. Smoke. And then a shout. Vargas. She was down but alive. Reeves dragged Langston out in cuffs. Agents surrounded us. We stumbled out into the rain. Blue lights pulsed. Helicopters thumped overhead like giant wings. Everything felt unreal, but the evidence was real, and someone upstairs was connected. Our fight wasn't finished. Days later, the fallout was explosive. Langston's confession hit every news channel. Arrests at AMC Financial Group. Lawyers disbarred. Trustees exposed. A federal investigation launched. Thatcher Callaway and Leora Burt faced charges from fraud to conspiracy to murder for hire. Orrin chose cooperation, avoiding maximum sentencing for his testimony. I stood in the courtroom when the verdicts came down. The gavel hit like a heartbeat. Sentence after sentence. 2 lifetimes of greed dissolved into legal terms. Outside, reporters shouted. Camera flashes glazed like fireflies. I raised my eyes to the sky. A voice inside me whispered, "Turn your wounds into wisdom." Mom's words. Not her exact words, but the truth of them. Pain is inevitable. Growth is optional. I chose growth. Weeks later, standing in what used to be my childhood home, rebuilt, restored, repurposed, I cut the ribbon on the Callaway Justice Foundation, a legal aid shelter for people betrayed by their families, financially and emotionally. Yellow roses lined the pathway, Mom's favorite. They glowed under the morning sun. I can't change what happened, I said to Vargas, who stood beside me, her ankle healed and her eyes steady. But I can change what happens next. She smiled faintly. That's why truth matters, she said. Not for the crime itself, but for the healing afterward. Inside the foundation, a bulletin board filled with quotes. Hope, courage, resilience. One stuck out. What we uncover in darkness becomes light for others. People gathered. Stories shared. Tears. Relief. New beginnings. As I walked through the rooms, each name on the client's list, each story of survival, I felt something solid settle in my chest. Closure is never neat. Forgiveness is not always granted, but rebuilding is real. At the very edge of the garden, a bench with Mom's name engraved. I sat. I breathed. I let the wind brush the past from my hair. And for the first time in years, I felt free. Because I didn't just survive what they did to me. I transformed it. I stood tall. I lived. And that was the true ending.